anyone else need a copy of the agenda? I see Scott has one. Do you need a copy?
Thank you.
Yep. How many do we have? 12. Oh, no, 11, because we're by stuff. Anyone watch meeting yet? Being sent again. I'm emailing them right now. Who's got it? His work email? Mm-hmm. this Alder Lemke? That should be the mayor. Go ahead, why don't you try moving him? Let's try calling
Can
Ford.
you hear me?
We can, yes.
All right.
Is Alder Lemke on the line? I believe we're missing Alder Coe and Alder Lemke.
Lemke says she's on.
She is on. Now there's 8, 6, 7. Scroll down. Alder Lemke, can you hear us? Alder Coe is working with IT,
Okay.
and Shannon says Alder Lemke is on the line, but I'm having trouble hearing her.
She may have just logged off and just logged back in.
Okay. So she was probably caller 3 from before.
All right. Shall we begin with the formalities, and then hopefully the others will join us shortly? So why don't we begin with the call to order and the pledge and minutes and proclamations, and hopefully in the next few minutes we can get our other two colleagues on the council to work this out, to work out the technical difficulties with IT, and soon join us. Before we get started, and I formally call us to order, I just want to remind everybody that you will need to raise your hand for me to call on you, and unraise your hand when you are done. Actually, while we're waiting for just a second here, I'm going to unmute Alder Miedema, who did a really nice job doing a brief tutorial for people on how to raise their hand last time. Alder Miedema, if you wouldn't mind running through that with people again, that would be great.
I sure can, Your Honor. So as you're looking at your screen, at the bottom of your screen, there will be a little person with 3 lines like a badge on their chest. If you click on that, it will open up a list of participants. And at the bottom of that, there is a little hand icon that you can hit to raise your hand. And again, as the mayor had said, you need to also be responsible for lowering your hand once you are done speaking. Otherwise, he'll think you always want to talk. There, depending on the view you're on, you can also just click a white spot on the screen. If you're on the alternative view, which is up at the top of the screen, you can change to the alternative view, and that'll pop that same menu up with that same little guy with the badge. And then you can take it from there.
Excellent. Alder Miedema, thank you very much.
Yes.
I hope that is clear to everyone. So if you're going to want to speak, we're going to need you to raise your hand so that I know that you want to speak, and then we will unmute you so that you can be heard. Okay. Just from the clerk's office, have we had any more luck adding on our 2 remaining colleagues that are trying still to log on?
Alder Lemke has joined us. Alder Coe is still working with IT.
Okay. Well, let's get started if we may, and just hopefully in just a few minutes, Alder Coe and IT will be able to join us. So I'm going to call to order the hour of 7 o'clock, having arrived on this 5th of May, Tuesday, 2020, the Common Council agenda of the City of Racine. Welcome to our newest elected members in your first full meeting of council. I should just give people, as by way of update, as we're waiting for people to come along here. We are still in the midst of the Safer at Home order and the public health emergency here in the city of Racine, which is why we continue to meet the way we are through this WebEx platform. Everybody's hoping that this is a temporary situation. All know that we need to stay safe and do what we can to flatten the curve on coronavirus before things can go back to usual. With that, I am going to ask Alder Tate, although this is a bit of a pro forma because I know we're waiting for Alder Coe, but Alder Tate, do you know of any absences that you've heard of from your colleagues for this evening?
I've received no indications of absences.
Thank you very much. And with that, I will ask everyone to please face the east and wherever you might be and rise for a moment and join me in stating the Pledge of Allegiance. So, I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. For joining us in that. I would also just ask if we could move on to the approval of the council proceedings for April 20th and 21st. Alder Tate, at this time, I would entertain a motion to approve those minutes.
Move to approve.
And Alder Santiago, can I ask you to second those?
I second.
All right, great. Is there any discussion? If people want to add any discussion to the minutes, please raise your hand. Seeing no one raising their hand, I will ask staff to unmute everyone. One more. There we go. All those in favor of the council proceeding minutes of April the 20th, 2020 and April 21st, 2020, say aye.
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 Opposed? That motion carries. All right, if we could remute everyone, and then I will move on to the proclamation portion of our agenda this evening. We actually have 3 proclamations that we've had requested for us today, and I just want to go through them very much in great thanks for what we've been hearing from members of our community. The first proclamation is in regards to Children's Mental Health Awareness Day, which is May the 7th of this week. And so I'll just read these without mentioning the whereases. Children's Mental Health Awareness Day is observed each year to raise awareness about the importance of children's mental health and the significant role mental health plays in overall health and wellness. Addressing the complex mental health needs for youth and families today is fundamental to the future of our community. Racine is one of 10 communities across Wisconsin funded by the Advancing a Healthier Wisconsin Endowment, which is focused on improving the social and emotional health of students. Despite current efforts, 1 in 5 Racine area children have a diagnosable mental health issue, and suicide is a leading cause of death for Racine youth between the ages of 10 and 24. 53% of Racine youth have reported having a significant issue with anxiety. 36% of Racine youth report feeling sad or hopeless for more than 2 weeks in a row, and 20% of Racine youth have seriously considered suicide. Mental health stigma elimination needs to be addressed to have an open conversation about mental health and how we can compassionately respond and support each other in this process. The importance of talking about mental health within our Racine families, schools, and communities is essential to help address this issue. Therefore, I, Corey Mason, Mayor of the City of Racine, do hereby recognize May 7th, 2020 as Children's Mental Health Awareness Day. I will say, just as we're going through this time of coronavirus, it's especially important to remember the mental well-being in addition to the physical well-being of everyone that we're trying to serve while we're in this time of safer at home. So the other one that I wanted to read is for Municipal Clerks Week. This is a really salient proclamation giving the historic election that we ran in the midst of a pandemic. I really want to give high praise to the city clerk and everyone on her staff, and frankly, all the departments who pitched in one way or another so that we could conduct that election as safely as possible. So I'll read that to you now. The office of the professional municipal clerk, a time-honored and vital part of local government, exists throughout the world, and that the office of the professional municipal clerk is the oldest among public servants. The office of the professional municipal clerk provides the professional link between the citizens, the local governing body, and agencies of government at other levels. Municipal clerks have pledged to be ever mindful of their neutrality and impartiality, rendering equal service to all. The professional municipal clerk serves as the information center on functions of local government and community. Professional municipal clerks continually strive to improve the administration of the affairs of the office of the professional municipal clerk through participation in education programs and other professional development. The municipal clerk and her staff did an extraordinary job on the April 7th, 2020 election in the midst of the coronavirus pandemic. And it is appropriate that we recognize the exemplary service and accomplishment of the office of the professional municipal clerk. Now, therefore, I, Corey Mason, do declare the week of May 3rd through May 9th, 51st Annual Professional Municipal Clerks Week, and assigned below. And then lastly, but certainly not least, it is also Public Employee Appreciation Week. And I can't think of a time when we need to be more appreciative of our public employees than amidst of the pandemic, as people are talking about who's an essential worker and who's not. What we realize so quickly in city service is that so many of our employees, of our 740 some employees, well over 600 of them are essential employees, putting themselves in increased danger to continue to serve the public so that we can all stay safe in a pandemic. So here's what it reads. Whereas Americans are served every single day by public servants at the federal, state, county, and city levels, these unsung heroes do the work that keeps our nation working. Their tireless efforts are especially critical today during the COVID-19 pandemic. Public employees take not only jobs, but solemn oaths and have a commitment to public service. These public servants, including military personnel, police officers, firefighters, aid workers, healthcare professionals, intelligence officers, risk their lives each day in service to the Constitution and the people of the United States and in our community and around the world. The City of Racine's clerk's office, along with representatives from nearly all city departments, did an outstanding job going above and beyond running curbside voting in the face of the coronavirus pandemic, ensuring the right to vote was preserved. And without these public servants at every level, continuity would be impossible in a that regularly changes leaders and elected officials. Now, therefore, I, the mayor of the city of Racine, do hereby announce and proclaim to all citizens and set seal here the week of May the 3rd through the 9th is public service recognition. So much gratitude to all of our public servants who are doing such great work in the midst of this pandemic. Were we all, I'm sure this would lead to applause for the heroic work that we're seeing our employees do. With that, stop and hand it over to Dottie Bowersox, our public health administrator, who is going to give an update to council on COVID. It occurred to us for two reasons this would be an important presentation. Number one, city staff have been dealing with the pandemic day to day, but many of our committees and certainly our council has not been meeting regularly. And so we thought it was very important sending daily. And there's the website and the tweets and the Facebook messages. We thought it was very important for you to hear directly from the city professionals that are working so hard to contain the coronavirus and give you an opportunity to ask questions as that may arise. So with that, I will hand it over to Dottie K and the other staff who might give this presentation. Dottie K?
Oh, thank you, Mayor. Tara, tell me when I can start.
1 second. You're good to go.
Oh, good, thank you. Well, again, good evening. Oh, thank you. Oh, thanks. Good evening. Again, I'm Dottie Key Bowersox, and I'm Public Health Administrator with the Health Department. I haven't had an opportunity to meet all of you, so thank you for this opportunity and welcome to the City of Racine. At the same time, I have Bobby Fergus, who is the Director of Community Health with me this evening, and I also have Cody Pierce, who is our epidemiologist, as well as responsible for emergency preparedness operations. We're going to start with Cody this evening with the presentation, and Cody, take it away.
So on this slide here, you can see just some basic numbers talking about cases of coronavirus in the city of Racine, our jurisdiction, as well as the state of Wisconsin. And just as a heads up, the City of Racine Public Health Department, our jurisdiction covers not only the city of Racine, but also the village of Williams Point and Elmwood Park. So all of these numbers are applicable to those three jurisdictions. So as of yesterday afternoon, there were about 8,200 cases of coronavirus in the state. In our jurisdiction, we had 333. As of this afternoon, we had 348, I believe. Of those, about 284 were active cases. 25 of them had been hospitalized at one point. Another 44 of those have recovered, and we have currently 5 recorded deaths in our jurisdiction. On top of those confirmed numbers, we have another 65 or so possible probable cases. And the definition of that, just quickly, is either a test result that was inconclusive for an individual, or a person who has signs and symptoms of the disease and whose doctor decided based on that and possible contact with a confirmed case that they were to have coronavirus themselves. So if you want to go to the next slide there. So on this slide, you can see progression of how the cases in our jurisdiction have grown over the past month and a half or so. So we received our first 2 diagnoses back in the middle of March, and they've grown from there. So the blue line you see here is our total number of confirmed cases of COVID, and the orange line at the bottom just shows the number of new cases we've received each day. So the numbers are obviously higher more recently than they were in the past. Some of that is attributable to more testing that's going on, which is something that we are happy to see. But also that is in relation just to, the virus continuing to spread in the city, our jurisdiction. So that's something we continue to work on. Here you can see a breakdown of the cases by age. So a 10-year increment there. The bulk of our cases really fall between individuals who are between 20 and about 59 or so. They're pretty evenly spread throughout that age bracket. And then you can see that we don't have too many confirmed cases in the higher, more vulnerable population in our community, but age is just one risk factor for having serious complications with the disease. So here you can see a bit of disparities represented by the data. So about 57% of our cases have self-reported that they are of the white or Caucasian race. Another 38% approximately have said that they are Black or African American, and you can see smaller percentages for other races and from there. Now, on a related note, again, self-reported data, about 41.5% of our cases have stated that they are Hispanic or Latino in ethnicity, and about 58.5% have stated that they are not. So looking at these data a bit differently, we compared it. It's not visible here, but we kind of broke things out. So looking at ethnicity and race together, so that those data show that people who claim to be white and non-Hispanic or Latino only comprise about 20% of our cases. About 40% of our cases are Hispanic or Latino in some way. Again, you can see that here. And about another 40% or so are African American. So you can see some big disparities when you consider that only about 23% of Racine population is African American, and another 23% is Hispanic or Latino. So we definitely have some disparities there, how the disease is affecting our community. And lastly, here, just cases by gender. So about 58% of cases are in females, and another 42% or so are females.
Okay, thank you, Cody. All All right, disparities present in the data. So challenges magnified for vulnerable populations during the pandemic. So there are several key points that we wanted to make here. One is the suboptimal housing for those individuals that are, again, the vulnerable populations that are most likely to be employed as essential workers and lack proper protections. So, and when we're talking about essential workers, we're talking about individuals that are working at grocery stores, individuals that are working in manufacturing situations, individuals that are working in retail situations. We also have the lack of access to healthcare services, the distrust of institutions, and as Cody already mentioned, talking about race and ethnicity, we'll be increasing our communications for the Spanish population. So approximately 12% of the individuals that we're dealing with or that have been identified as positive at this point are Spanish speakers only. And then we'll be enlisting the faith leaders and community leaders of color to reach local residents of color. And if we take a look at our numbers over the last 3 weeks for those individuals who have been identified as positive with COVID, we've seen about a 271% increase in the positive in the African American community. So also with this, you know, looking at the vulnerable populations, what we're finding as well is that they're multi-generational members within the household. The households are larger. And again, within the framework of being employed as essential workers, we're also finding for the non-essential workers, unemployed, they're not able to work from home. They're individuals that were in restaurants or other sort of institutions or organizations in which they're closed and or they have limitations on the type of services that they can provide.
In response with what the Public Health Department is doing, we have been contact monitoring and tracing more than 1,400 individuals. This includes individuals that have confirmed cases of COVID. They may be probable, and they are also others that are contact investigations, people that may have been exposed, as well as people that their physicians may have suspected that they may have COVID, but at the current moment there was not enough testing earlier in the part of the pandemic, so now individuals are being tested. So with the 1,400 in mind, that did not include the negative test results that we were tracking when we first started. When we first started contact tracing, we were doing a full investigation on everybody until we received their test results back. So keep in mind, even bigger picture that I really want to stress the importance of is that in the course of an entire year, the health department usually does approximately 2,000 cases for all communicables. So we have done 1,400 in just 8 weeks. So we have definitely surpassed our expectations. So everyone is doing well. There are 8 full-time staff members and 1 part-time that is doing contact tracing. So they're working 7 days a week, making sure that we can notify individuals of their test results. On top of that, contact tracing household contacts, making sure that there's education that's provided, as well as knowing the safer at home, and you know, informing them that they cannot go to work, and working with them on any questions, making sure that they have needs as far as food, getting health care. We put all of that into place with each individual that we talk to. We also are working with local businesses, either essential and non-essential businesses, making sure that they are understanding different cleaning techniques, ways to keep their employees safe, using 6 feet distancing, wearing masks, doing temperature and symptom checking prior to shifts. So that has been working really well within our jurisdiction. We've also been working with all different city departments, helping individuals also keep their departments safe. And then we also participate in the Racine County Emergency Operations Center on a daily basis. And then we also are informing and approving public health communications. Dottie K has been good with working with individuals throughout the community, getting us all to collaborate, bring us to the table so that everybody within our jurisdiction has been on the same page. We also have been working on the activation and coordination of an isolation site within our jurisdiction, and we'll be finalizing that within this week.
All right, stay safe for seeing. Everyone needs to do their part. So the CDC guidelines have changed. DHS guidelines have changed for the contest investigation, exactly what a positive is, when they're a positive, when you need to stay home, when you need to go out. This has been a moving target for 9 weeks now, which is kind of hard to believe. We were talking about this afternoon, that it's actually been that long. It seems like a lot longer. But nonetheless, there's some things that have not changed. One is avoid gathering in groups. Now, that number has changed a couple of times, but right now, under 10 individuals. And at the same time, within that avoid gathering in groups, that 6-foot social or physical distancing is still applicable. 6 foot is a guideline. We've done some research on sneezes and coughs, and they can go up to 13 feet. At the same point, we're asking individuals to be conscientious when they're with family or where they're at, that they avoid gathering and that they keep their distance. Stay home, your own home. If for whatever reason you have to go out, please make it essential. Otherwise, stay home. As the mayor stated this evening, we have essential workers here at the city that need to be here and need to perform duties and such. At the same point, if you don't have to go to the grocery store, if you don't have to go to the pharmacy, if you don't have to go to one of the box stores that are currently open, please stay home. Limit your travel, again, to essential services. Again, that would be the grocery store, the pharmacy. If you feel sick, stay home. Please stay home. Contact your healthcare provider for guidance and potential testing recommendations. Again, those recommendations have changed frequently from both Department of Health Services and the CDC. At this point, testing is available, but again, they're asking individuals that are symptomatic to be tested and not everyone. But again, if you feel sick, stay home. Wash your hands, wash your hands, wash your hands. If anyone's been around long enough, they know that that's, a Daddy K mantra is wash your hands and or use hand sanitizer often. As you touch your face, as you have touch points on different objects, and then you touch your face, you touch your mouth, you touch your nose, you're taking that contaminant, you're putting it on your face, you're breathing it in. So wash your hands and use hand sanitizer often. Cover your cough and sneeze. Elbow is always a great option on that. Regularly clean and disinfect surfaces and objects that are touched frequently, but be judicious about it. So if you're not going out and if you're not touching different points, outside of your home, you don't have to be crazy and clean everything every hour, and you need to use the cleaners as directed, please. We're having calls come in, poison control, where individuals are mixing cleaners. They're not using them as directed. They're flushing them down the toilet, having plumbing problems. So again, use them as directed, use them as you feel comfortable, but at the same point, be respectful of the directions. The other thing I would add to this slide is the hoarding issue. Individuals are buying more than they need, buying more than they're going to use, and the latest is pork and beef products, which I can understand. At the same point, as more of those products are taken and not utilized and they're hoarded in people's homes, at the same point, those individuals who really need these products don't have availability to them. So please, careful on what you buy and how much of it that you buy. And then the last thing is the respiratory etiquette. So there's been a lot of discussion about masks, and should I wear a mask, should I not wear a mask? And that really depends on how you're going to utilize the mask and what kind of mask it is. If you have expectation management with that, it's not PPE, it's respiratory etiquette. Then you might be applicable for a mask. At the same point, you need to wash your hands, sanitize your hands. You need to put on a clean mask. So if you've got a mask that you've been wearing for a week, okay, it needs to be laundered. So you should have at least 2 masks, whether there be cloth, which is an option, but not all of them are made the same. So you need to realize that when we're talking about PPE, there's certain manufacturing guidelines that must be met and contained with that product, and as well as a method of distribution. So again, expectation management is real important. There's a lot of good information on the CDC, but again, avoid gathering in groups, keep that distance, that physical distance, limit your travel. One of the things that Cody had mentioned with the increase in our numbers, and if you take a look at the numbers, this last week and a half has just been ridiculous on multiple levels about the number of individuals that are turning up positive. Part of that, as Cody mentioned, is the increased availability of testing, but the other problem is that individuals are not keeping their distance. You know, if you've been to any of the box retailers that are open, parking lots are full on Saturday and Sunday. They're not 6 foot. They're not, you know, they're not less than 10 individuals. And there's only so much with the authority of the Public Health Department and the Department of Health Services that I can actually do, or that we can actually do as a city. So really staying at home is still the best option, being in your yard, being on the sidewalk, keeping that social distancing. But again, that's why we're seeing an increase in the numbers as well.
Thank you so much. I do want to open it up for questions for people. Before I do, I just want to say Dottie K wasn't exaggerating, nor was Bobby Fergus when she said they've been here 7 days a week. I can tell you, someone who's often here in the weekend, they've had their entire staff here trying to get ahead of this pandemic, and they should really be thanked for their dedication. I mean, all of our public employees have really stepped up, but public health has been here like literally almost around the clock since this pandemic started, and they deserve our thanks.
Thank you, Chair.
With that, I am going to look for hands to be raised if people have questions. I see Alder Lemke has a question.
Yeah, I have one comment and one question. I really appreciate this presentation so everyone can kind of know what's going on in the community. You kind of explained what contact tracing was, but I just want to say how impressed I am. I'm not sure if folks, listening at home or in the community understand that means you're literally following up, using 9 people, following up with 1,400 people that have potentially been exposed. So I just want to say thank you, and that is extremely impressive. The second thing that I just wanted to sort of ask a question, so maybe it would give you a platform to talk about it a little, is talking a little bit about the fact that people can be sick without symptoms. I think it's great that we see that there's not a lot of people who are elderly who have been exposed. And in order to keep that way, I think it's really important for people in our community to understand that you can not have symptoms and potentially pass it on. So can you just explain a little about that, or what we know about that?
Yeah, thank you, Alder Lemke. I appreciate that. Yes. So it actually, the CDC just came out with some percentages as far as symptoms go, and you're correct. Anywhere between 60 and 80% of those individuals that are positive could be non-symptomatic. At the same point, for those individuals that are symptomatic, about 30% of them have fever and chills, about 30% of them have muscle aches, and about 30% of them have cough and shortness of breath that they've been reporting. So those are the most common symptoms that you're going to see with the disease or with the virus.
Excellent. Dottie K, I wonder if it'd be possible, or whoever's controlling, so just, we've been talking about, people probably heard the phrase flatten the curve quite a bit. Can you talk about where our curve is right now? I mean, we're a ways away from flattening our curve. If you could, I don't know if we can go back to that particular slide, but both just to put an exclamation point on the trend that we have overall, and then the disparities that we're seeing in that trend. Just if people could reference that one more time.
Yeah, well, if you take a look, let's see, it's the search slide. There we go. Yeah, if you take a look at this slide, so back on the 27th of April, we were at 174 positives. And as Cody mentioned, today we're at 333. So that's 159 positives that we've had since the 27th to today, which is a huge number. If you take a look at the daily cases down at the orange line down at the bottom of the dot, you can see that when we started out with 2 and 3 and 4 cases, 7, 11, 19, 16. So from the 25th, other than one day, we've had a steady increase. So again, that has to do with individuals not doing the physical distancing, and also with the availability of the increase in testing. So in flatten the curve, Mayor, when you speak of that, that means that you hit a certain peak and then you stay at that level for an undesignated amount of time, and then you slowly decline. Now, in most situations across the country, the incline has been much faster than the decline, but flattening the curve just means you've got the same amount of cases, and you're not seeing this significant increase like we've seen over the last several days and the last couple of weeks.
Thank you, Dottie K. And then, is there anyone else who wanted to ask a question while we've got our public health professionals here? Okay. Seeing none, thank you very much. And again, thank you to our staff who've been working so hard on this. It's really important. With that, I am going to turn it over to the president of the council, Alder Tate, and ask him to do the Office of the Mayor report. I guess it's everything. Alder Tate, have you had any items requested for separate consideration?
I have not, but I am going to pull some myself.
Okay.
Because I think it's important that we discuss them as a council. So the first item to pull for separate consideration is item 0247-20. That is a communication sponsored by Mayor Mason requesting to approve a $2.4 million loan from the Board of Commissioners and Public Lands, which shall represent a general obligation debt to the city of Racine, which proceeds shall in turn be lent to Cardinal Capital for the Ajax project for a term of 24 months, that's 2 years, with interest only for the duration of the term, no prepayment penalty, and an interest rate to the city of 2.5% per annum. Cardinal will in turn be obligated to pay the city at an interest rate of 3% per annum, with a second position lien on the project subordinate only to the first mortgage and a full corporate guarantee from Cardinal Capital. The recommendation is to approve the request with the listed stipulations as it relates to the percentage rate per annum to the city from Cardinal. Fiscal notice that this will incur a 24-month debt obligation for $2.4 million, which Cardinal Capital will agree to fully repay. And the city will pay $5,000 per month on the interest obligation, while Cardinal will pay $6,000 per month, resulting in a net gain of positive revenue of $1,000 per month. There are no fees involved in applying for the loan through the Bureau BCPL loan. Move to approve.
And is there a second to approve? We'll ask Alder Tate if you'd be willing, or Alder Horton is raising his hand. Could you unmute Alder Horton?
Second.
All right. With that, I'd like to turn it over to the city administrator, Jim Palanek, to describe this. And for those following at home who might have the agenda or members of the council, you can find this item on the bottom of page 4 of the agenda.
Mr. Mayor, members of council, you may recall that the Ajax project, which the council approved last November in terms of the incentive agreement, involved 2 components to the project. One was an affordable project with 54 units of low to moderate income housing. The investment there is a little over $10 million. The second component on the same site is a so-called market rate building in which 87 units of market rate housing will be built at about $19.3 million. So the overall project is a little over $30 million. That project is now well under construction in terms of all of the Ajax buildings. The former manufacturing buildings have been demolished. Most of that debris has been either crushed and left on site to be used as a cap or removed. They've actually completed all of the foundation work as well as the foundation walls for the affordable unit. And they've done a lot of preparation work for the market rate project. We did several incentives for that project, including a $900,000 Board of Commissioners of Public Lands loan that for 20 years, and that was for the market rate project. Recently, because of the effects of the pandemic and how it has affected some of the financial markets, their equity that is actually coming from local sources has gotten to where they wanted to sit on the sidelines, in effect, for a short period of time to see through sort of how this plays out and how we reopen the economy. So in order for us to continue the market rate portion of the project, they had asked if the city would be willing to, for a very short period of time, a 2-year period, do a loan again with the Board of Commissioners of Public Lands for $2.4 million that would step in as a bridge loan for this local equity portion of the project financing. And there would be interest only, and the full payment would come in no later than 2 years with no prepayment penalty. So what this does then is the city would be taking out a $2.4 million loan from the Board of Commissioners of Public Lands. It would be a debt obligation for the city. We would in turn have an agreement with Cardinal Capital Management that they would have to fully repay it. The full term would be for 24 months. It would be interest only. The city would be receiving the loan at 2.5% interest. We would in turn be relending it to Cardinal Capital at 3% interest. So in effect, on a monthly basis, Cardinal would be paying us $6,000 a month in interest. We would be paying the BCPL $5,000 a month in interest. So we would be gaining $1,000 a month for doing this. The security we would have against the loan, number one, would be a second position lien against the building. The building has about a $19.3 million cost. Over $16 million of that is hard construction costs. And there's only about $12 million worth of first position debt. So in the case of a default, the first position lien holder, financer, would try to get their $12 million, and then we would be second in line for first our $900,000 and then our $2.4 million loan. We believe that that second position should put us in order to get repaid. However, should that not be the case, there is a second security which we insisted on, and that would be that Cardinal Capital Management has to provide a corporate guarantee for any and all shortfalls that would happen beyond any defaults. And Cardinal Capital Management, not the LLC, the actual corporation, has a net worth that is many, many times the total debt that we would have. So because of those securities, we feel that there would be very limited risk to take this project out. But in turn, we would be able to keep the project moving without any delays, without any interruptions, in a difficult time where financing is, and it would ultimately get repaid. And in the process, we would wind up making $1,000 a month for 24 months for us doing the loan. So as a result of that, we would recommend to City Council that you approve the city obligating itself for this $2.1 million short-term Board of Commissioners of Public Lands loan under the terms as described. And with that, I would be willing to entertain any and all questions you may have.
Okay, are there questions from council members? Again, if you could raise your hand if you have those questions. Alder Perez.
Thank you, Your Honor. I have read the information, and I'd like Mr. Palahniuk to assure us that this is not going to be a con like we've had in the past. What assurances are in place? And if you could verbally say what they are, because I'm concerned that we're going to fall into a situation again where we're not going to get paid. And even ask, have we already been paid for the initial investment we made and then the initial loan we set? Has that come due at all yet? And how do we know this second loan will come due as well? Can you please give us some details on that?
Mr. Palahniuk?
Yes, Alderman Perez, the initial loan, the $900,000, we have only come to the position that we are now drawing it down from the Board of Commissioners of Public Lands. So there would not have been any requirement yet to make any repayment on that. But we do fully expect that once the repayment becomes due, the Cardinal will fulfill it. With regard to the $2.4 million loan, as I indicated, we have two different sort of belt and suspenders approach to our security position in terms of knowing that we would get repaid in the case of a default. Number one would be the second position lien against the property. So that even if it went into default and the property was sold, after the first position lender was paid, we feel there would still be enough proceeds to cover our loans. But if there weren't, then Cardinal Capital would have to make up the difference, literally to the point of them selling their assets or selling their entire company in order to make up the default. And Cardinal Capital has a net worth dramatically higher than any of those possible defaults. So as a result of that, we feel fully comfortable there's very, very little risk in this case.
What would
Alder
prevent?
Perez, did you have any follow-up?
Yes, sir. What would prevent them from filing bankruptcy and leaving us holding the note again?
Filing bankruptcy would not eliminate their requirement to fulfill their corporate guarantee. I mean, the creditor, we would still be the primary creditor against any bankruptcy. So a bankruptcy would be a reorganization of some type to fulfill creditors, and we'd be the first in line. So they wouldn't escape it through that.
Do you feel then that this is a really solid investment that we're making?
I do. This is a really solid company that's done a lot of projects all across the state of Wisconsin. They've had good success. They've had the ability to continue these projects even under some difficult economic times. And they know really how to make these projects successful in terms of a diverse stack of capital that doesn't rely on a lot of debt or a lot of equity or any one particular piece, but rather puts a series of things together so that it isn't as potentially risky. So yes, we believe this is a good project. It will be successful, and ultimately the city will be repaid fully on all of these obligations.
Thank you.
Next, I see Alder Peterson for his first foray as an alder has his hand raised. Alder Peterson, what is your question or comment, sir?
Yeah, here we go. I talked to Mr. Pelnick. I'm not overly concerned about the $2.4 million loan. Major concern is that, as doing a little research on Cardinal Management, they have a couple properties in town that they're managing, one being 1130 Carlisle, another 1125 College. And then correct me if I'm wrong here, please, at any time. But they are considered nonprofits, meaning that they're not paying any taxes. And the further you dig, you see the same process we went through with Mitchell Wagon Loft and the arcades downtown. They also are now nonprofits. My concern is, do we have any guarantee? My guess is after their 11 years of paying off the debt, they're going to sell it and somebody's going to assume it as a nonprofit. Hence, we never get any tax dollars for it whatsoever. What's your opinion on that?
Alder Peterson, it's a great question. I would defer your question to Alder Palanek. Those are definitely questions we considered when we put the agreement together with Cardinal, particularly as Mitchell Wagon Lofts was divesting itself. Mr. Palanek, can you give Alder Peterson a little background on the larger agreement we reached with Cardinal in terms of what their obligations are on both sites?
Yes, Mayor Mason and Alderman Peterson, precisely as you indicated, because of situations like Mitchell Wagon Lofts, we specifically negotiated in the incentive agreement with Cardinal for Ajax. And we now do this in every one of our development agreements when it comes to any level of incentive, is to basically say that not only for the life of any incentives that you provide, but continuing to any successors or assigns or anyone who buys this in the future, you will either pay full property taxes or you agree in advance that you will pay a payment in lieu of taxes equal to the amount that otherwise would be charged for property taxes in perpetuity on this project. So that language is included in the agreement. It was approved by this council, and it will be part of this property in perpetuity. And those are the kinds of things that we put into effect now in every one of our development agreements.
Alder Peterson, did you have a follow-up question, or did that answer your question?
Partially. Does that include unified taxes or just city taxes?
Mr. Palanek?
Well, it would include, for the life of any TID capture, if they're getting the benefit of any TID capture as a development incentive, it would include all their property taxes. After that goes away, the only thing we can obligate them to would be our property taxes. So at that point in time, we know at least they would have to pay the city its property taxes.
One more question.
Sure, go ahead.
Of the 2.4 million, is that all for construction purposes, or are there any management fees that is being taken out of there? Or is that strictly for construction? And will this get them to the end line? Will this get them to the finish line, or are they still gonna be looking for more money down the line?
Mr. Palaniuk?
Alderman Peterson, this will in fact get them to the finish line. There should be no further requests. We've made it clear that we would not provide anything further. And it is our understanding that since this is stepping in for equity, that it is going to construction costs.
It's your understanding, but it's not a lock. You believe it's going towards construction.
I would hesitate to say absolutely to you. It is simply my understanding. I haven't seen it in writing.
All right, thank you very much. So you, from my understanding then, just to get it clear, the city is in perpetuity going to get property taxes out of this.
That is correct by our agreement. That's correct. Well, so long as the property exists, if there's a building there and it's subject to property taxes, yes, it's being assessed by the city.
Thank you very much.
Okay, are there other questions on this item? Alder Tate, did you have another question?
Yes.
Please proceed.
So I just wanted to kind of ask Mr. Palaniuk to give some background on the project in and of itself, as well as its current timeline, in order for them, Cardinal, to kind of qualify for certain aspects of incentive from the state as well. So, Mr. Palaniuk, would you be able to speak to the general package, original incentive package, and kind of the steps that Cardinal and the timeline they have to stick with in terms of construction to be able to qualify for certain credits? And I think that should also give us some additional perspective in terms of where this money is going to go and when it's going to get used, and what we'll see as an end product in terms of providing a little bit of confidence in the operation.
Yes, thank you, Alderman Tate. The affordable component to this project, which is the 54-unit building that is about $10.4 million of investment, that began very quickly because Cardinal has an absolute obligation to deliver it by the conclusion of this year. In order for them to remain eligible for their low-income housing tax credits, they have to deliver it. So that's why that is going very rapidly, and it is their absolute desire to have that ready for occupancy by January, I believe it is, 2021. The market rate will be being built concurrently, but they do anticipate that will ultimately be completed a little bit after that, so probably into the spring of 2021. But basically, that will be a very compressed timeline with a lot of construction happening through the remainder of this year and just into the early spring of next year. So all of that money will be spent, all of that work will be accomplished primarily in the year 2020. And in the case of the market rate portion of this, it absolutely has to be finished during that time.
So I think just noting that particular timeline that they're operating under, as well as their own incentive to have a market rate building in operation as quickly as possible, because that's where, effectively they're going to make their bank, should be indicative to us as a council in terms of, their intention as well as their motivation to get things done and how that plays out with this particular loan as well. So that's kind of just for the council's edification, as well as Alder Peterson as a new member, to kind of know a little bit more of the background as far as what this project is, what its timelines are, and how our ability to provide kind of a cushion, especially given this pandemic, allows them to continue to operate to the pace that ultimately provides value to the city in terms of having net new construction done potentially by the end of this year. So that's all I wanted to add, and thank you for indulging.
Important questions. Thank you, President Tate. other questions? I see no other hands. Alder Peterson, I can't tell if your hand is up again or if you neglect to put it back down.
Yes, it's up again.
Okay, go ahead. Do you have a follow-up question?
Yes, just for Mr. Letney. What is the enforceability of transfer of property and that particular language for the property taxes? Like I said, I'm all for I'm all for project. I'm all for giving them the 2.4 if they need it. My only concern is a guarantee that it's going to create property taxes down the line.
I'll refer this to Mr. Letney. I'll just clarify though. There's the agreement that's before us that we're talking about. The questions you're asking about, Alder Peterson, really go to the previous agreement that we arrived at. But I'll let Mr.
Right, I understand, but I'm not going to agree to another 2.4 if there's not property taxes.
Understood. I'm just delineating what's before us and what we've done previously. But I completely understand as a new member of council who didn't have the opportunity to have that conversation why you would need that context. So, Attorney Letney, could the Alder's question, please?
Sure. There's covenants of record that run with the land that are already in place.
Fantastic. Thank you. So it's enforceable. That was my only question.
Yep.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Alder Peterson. Any other hands up on this item? Okay, seeing none, just as a reminder, what we're going to do is unmute people, which means there might be some feedback, but the clerk will call the roll and ask you to vote aye or nay on the question. So seeing no further questions, the clerk will open the roll. Please vote as your name is called.
It being a new council, I'm going to go ahead and start back with the first letter of the alphabet, which is C. Alder Coe.
Aye.
Alder Jones. Alder Jones.
Aye.
Next is Alder Tate. Alder Tate.
Aye.
Santiago. Alder Santiago.
You hear me?
I'm sorry, can you repeat that one more time? Thank you, I got it that time. Alder Levy. Alder Peterson.
Aye.
Alder Horton.
Aye.
Alder West.
Aye.
Alder Young.
Aye.
Alderwoman Glenn.
Aye.
Alder Land.
Aye.
Alder Perez.
Aye.
Alder Taft.
Aye.
Alder Meekma.
Aye.
Alder Lemke.
Aye.
The vote passes 15 yes.
Excellent. Alder Tate, did you have any other items for separate consideration? We got to unmute Alder Tate.
Yes, item 0242-20 on the bottom of page 2. That is a communication from Mayor Mason, President Tate II, Alder Coe, Alder Jones, Alder Santiago, Alder Levy, Alder Horton, Alder West, Alder Young, Alder Land, Alder Perez, Alder Taft, Alder Mi'kmaq, and Alder Lemke, proposing that the Common Council direct the city clerk to mail an application for an absentee ballot along with postage paid return envelope to all City of Racine registered voters in time for them to participate in the August 11th, 2020 partisan primary election and the November 3rd, 2020 general and presidential election. Now, the recommendation was that the Common Council direct the city clerk to do just that, and that the fiscal note is that the city clerk direct to establish an estimated cost for the project, explore funding resources, both internal and external, including potential grants, and report to the Common Council funding options, and if required, ask the Common Council to approve funding for this project. Move to approve.
There's a motion to approve. Alder Land, would you like to second that motion? Alder Land?
Second.
Excellent. Alder Tate, would you like to speak to the motion?
Yes, please. So, first I want to thank, all my colleagues and the mayor's office for seeing the necessity of this type of action. Also giving kudos to our counterparts in Milwaukee for doing something similar several weeks ago. Considering that we had an election during a pandemic, I think it's incumbent upon local government and hopefully at some point state and federal government to do everything that they can to ensure that people can still cast their ballots and participate in our democracy without having to risk their health or their safety in voting in person if we're still under the midst of this pandemic come August or November, which is very likely given the data that we see and our understanding from the CDC in terms of how these things work. So I'm just glad to see that our city is being proactive and our council members are also taking proactive measures to ensure protection of the public and also opportunity to participate in our democracy. So I'm grateful for everybody who stepped forward, and especially the clerk's office for being, just as consummate professionals as they are, to be able to fulfill these needs as well as holding the last election that we had. Thank you.
Thank you. Could we give the floor to Alder Land, please?
Yes, I would like to thank the clerk's office for the wonderful job they did during this pandemic and all the employees that helped out with it. And I think it's really incumbent upon us to protect citizens of the city of Racine. And I think this is a great way to do it, to give everybody the opportunity that is registered to vote by mail if they so choose.
Thank you. Alder Perez has his hand up. Alder
Thank you, Your
Perez,
Honor.
you have the floor.
Thank you. I really like this idea. I think that as citizens of the United States, voting is a privilege that many other countries don't have. With that being said, and having read this, I have a little concern with just one word in this whole ordinance, and I'd like to revise it if possible. During the fiscal note, it says that on the last line, if required, ask the Common Council to approve funding the project. Because any way we figure it out, it's going to be more than $5,000. It still has to come back to the Common Council. However, I'd like to revise this to read, I'd like to make a motion to revise this to read if required, and just remove that and just put in there, it must come back to the Common Council.
Alder Perez, I think procedurally your point is well taken. Anything more than 5,000 would have to come to the council, and so to reflect the practice and requirements of anywhere spending, that would certainly be an appropriate amendment at this time. Would you like to formally amend it to remove the words "if required"?
Thank you, Your Honor, for that privilege. Yes, I'd like to amend it to have the "if required" removed.
Is there a second for that?
Second.
There's a second. All right. Now, what we have on the floor, just to be clear, because there are hands that are up, what we have before us is whether or not the word "if required" should be removed. So if you want to speak to that, leave your hand up. If you wanted to speak to the main motion, feel free to wait to do that till we get to the amendment. I see Alder Land has her hand raised. If we could give Alder Land the floor.
Support the amendment.
Great. Alder Perez, I don't see much more debate on it. Seeing no further debate on your amendment there, the clerk will open the roll. Please vote aye if you are in favor of the amendment to remove the words "if required," and vote nay if you are against it. The clerk will call the roll. Please vote as she calls your name.
Alder Coe.
Aye.
Alder Jones. Alder Tate.
Aye.
Alder Santiago.
Aye.
Alder Levy,
Aye.
Alder Peterson,
Aye.
Alder Horton,
Aye.
Alder West,
Aye.
Alder Young,
Aye.
Alderwoman Glenn,
Aye.
Alder Land,
Aye.
Alder Perez,
Aye.
Alder Taft,
Aye.
Alder Mikma,
Aye.
Alder Lumke.
Aye.
Vote passes 15 ayes.
Okay, so that amendment carries. What we have before us then is the main motion as amended, removing the words "if required." Is there anyone else who would like to speak to the main motion as amended? Seeing no persons further wanting to speak to the motion now as amended, the clerk will open the roll. Please vote aye or nay as she calls your name.
Alder Coe, Alder Jones,
Aye.
Alder Tate,
Aye.
Alder Santiago,
Aye.
Alder Levy, Alder Peterson,
Aye.
Alder Horton,
Aye.
Alder West,
Aye.
Alder Young,
Aye.
Alderwoman Glenn,
Nay.
Alder Land,
Aye.
Alder Perez,
Aye.
Alder Taft,
Aye.
Alder Mikma,
Aye.
Alder Lemke.
Aye.
The item passes 14 ayes, 1 nay.
All right, that item carries. If we could unmute Alder Tate and proceed with any other items for separate consideration.
Next item 0241-20, communication sponsored by Mayor Mason submitting an emergency declaration for the city of Racine to participate in an amicus brief regarding the Safer at Home policy. Recommendation is to approve the emergency declaration and participate in the amicus brief regarding the Safer at Home policy. Move to approve.
Motion to approve this item. Is there a second?
Amicus.
Second,
Who said the second? I'm sorry.
Alder Lemke.
Thank you, Alder Lemke. Discussion, Alder Tate, do you want to speak to it?
Sure. So for those who may not be aware or those watching at home on Facebook, wherever you may be, this is in reference to the city of Racine supporting the governor's Safer at Home order. Obviously, as we just heard earlier in today's meeting, the cases in Racine continue to rise as far as positive diagnoses for COVID-19 coronavirus. So clearly, it is important that physical distancing, physical isolation, and all the recommendations that come along with that are necessary, because this is not slowing down, it's actually increasing. And for, the Supreme Court of this state to potentially overturn that flies in the face of the data, as well as what public safety experts are saying and public health experts are saying. And it's important that the city of Racine clearly declare its support for measures that are designed to protect the health and safety of our citizens in the midst of a pandemic. Thank you.
Thank you, Alder Tate. Alder Perez, you have your hand up.
Thank you very much. I'd like to, I read the amicus brief and curious about how it's presented. Is it possible to ask the city attorney to explain a couple things for me that are on there?
Yeah, please state your questions and we'll ask Attorney Levy to answer.
Reading the amicus brief, it enjoins the declaration. It's an emergency declaration enjoining us to the stay-at-home order of the governor. I totally get that part. Now, some of the statutes that were stated for the ability of the mayor to do that were confusing to me, and maybe I'd like to point out what I read and see if I misunderstood it. Statute 62.098A just says that you have to be a citizen of the United States of America. And that 323.11 says that declare an emergency declaration. 323.14.4, a declaration of expediency. How does an amicus brief done by the mayor support these things? If nothing else, the only thing I found that really supported the mayor's ability to do this was the Racine Statute 34.1 that says that he could put something and make a decision on behalf of the council. Can you explain how those statutes that were quoted in the amicus brief, which I understand by definition is a friendly note in support of the governor's action, are something that the mayor can do using those statutes that were quoted in the briefing?
Mr. Letney?
Sure. So Alderman, I think you're reading from the City of Racine mayoral proclamation dated April 29th, 2020. Is that right?
The link that's provided in our...
Right. That's not the actual amicus brief. That is the mayor's direction authorizing me as the city attorney to sign the amicus brief. That's not the actual amicus brief.
So why weren't we given an amicus brief to review then? Just to look at to see what it is that the mayor is doing on our behalf?
I'm not sure I have an answer for you there. I can tell you what the amicus brief says. So the request of the state legislature was to enjoin or prevent the continuing effect of the order of the secretary designee of the Department of Health Services. So it's really the extension of the stay-at-home order and some of the issues. The amicus brief that I signed as the city attorney specifically presents the perspective of local health officers from around the state and argues that it's better to have one unified process and one unified set of orders for the state as opposed to each individual county or municipality opening or closing or handling things differently. That's all the amicus brief says. So the mayor, this request from a variety of municipalities, there's about a dozen municipalities that signed off on this, came in between council meetings and had to be submitted no later than April 29th. So pursuant to the original emergency declarations the mayor did, the mayor authorized me to sign the amicus brief on behalf of the city, obviously having to come to council for consideration after that.
Yeah, but reading the statutes, where does it permit us to do an amicus brief when the statute that were quoted in what was given to us doesn't say anything about declaring support in a legal matter other than making a declaration of expediency for an action that the government is taking?
Well, the mayor's directives of March 18th and April 9th, which the Common Council ratified at the last meeting on April 21st, authorized the mayor to undertake whatever is necessary and expedient in this moment. And because there was timing issues, that was the mayor's direction. Normally, it would have been taken to the Common Council for direction, but there wasn't time because of when the brief was due.
I understand that, but isn't an amicus brief a brief that we submit on behalf of our government when we're not originally invited to be part of the lawsuit? So we're not really a party in the suit?
Amicus briefs are non-party briefs, that is true.
So,
Alder Perez, I'm I think if you could get to the point that you're trying to make here, there are other people who are in the queue.
All right, Your Honor, thank you. If I could come back to it, if my questions are not answered, I'd appreciate it.
Okay. If we could then call on Alder Peterson.
Yes, I'm just curious, as being that they heard the case this morning at 10 o'clock already, what effect does this have? Is it just a feel-good kind of thing, or what, does it have any effect?
It's a great indication of what makes the emergency order timely. As the city attorney pointed out, this was due last week. They heard the case in front of the court today. Now, nobody knew last week when we went along with filing it with the other municipalities, they would have taken it up as quickly as today, but it gives you an indication about why those emergency actions around gubernatorial authority and state authority around a public health emergency became necessary. But it may be that some of these emergency orders are things that by the time council meets may have already happened, and that's the nature of the emergency that we're in with things moving so quickly. I don't know if Attorney Letney wants to give more context to that.
No, and just Alder Peterson, so you're aware, anytime, this is unusual that there are any of these kinds of emergency declarations from the mayor, but any emergency declaration from the mayor must come to the Common Council for consideration, for ratification or rejection. And, as a practical matter, because the case has already been heard, I don't know if I'd refer to it as a feel-good, but there's not, frankly, much the council could do to reject at this moment, but they are still all required to come to the Common Council to be reported.
Alder Peterson, did that answer your question?
Yeah, that's good. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Others who wanted to speak to this? Let's go back to Alder Perez. I think I want to see if we've got a little more, if he has a little bit wants on his questions.
Well, Your Honor, that was the question I was going to ask too, since it's already come before the court today. Has a decision been made that would affect our joining this brief in support of this?
Attorney Letney?
I'm not sure I understand your question, Alder Perez. The court has heard the case and is off making a decision. Presumably in the next few days, the court will make a decision.
Okay. So, Your Honor, with all due respect, sir, getting your proclamation saying that we're going to enjoin an amicus brief, why weren't we supplied with a brief and supposed to saying that you want to do it or that you're declaring that you're going to do it, so that we could at least understand what it was that as a city we're recommending or going forth with?
Attorney Letney, where is the status of the brief? I know we sent around the emergency order. Did we communicate the full brief itself to council?
I'm not aware that that happened. I will email it right now, so everybody has it. It's fairly short. The substance of the brief is fairly short. So,
may I follow up, sir?
Alder Perez, you have the floor.
Thank you, sir. So again, I'm used to reading statutes, and I don't usually get them too wrong. But how does pointing out that you're an American citizen what does that have to do with being able to declare something like this? I'm just thinking that a lot of these statutes were thrown in there that don't seem to make the point.
The statutes that are in the mayor's order have nothing specifically to do with filing an amicus brief. They have to do with the emergency power of a municipality during a declared state of emergency. So normally, if there was going to be something like this, it would come to the Common Council to talk about and ask whether it was acceptable to join it. This was, what's attached to the agenda was not specific to the statutes are not specific to the brief. They are specific to the authority of the mayor to direct the city attorney's office to participate as amicus in this moment.
Okay.
You won't find any of those statutes anywhere listed in the amicus brief. It's just a emergency declaration.
And the first one, 6209-8A, what does that have to do with the mayor having the authority of a mayor?
Attorney Letney?
6209 sub 8 is specific to the mayor, the authority of a mayor generally.
It doesn't say mayor specifically, but it does say being a citizen.
Alderman Section 6209 relates to the officers of a municipality.
Okay.
I mean, that's what that statute is, and I'm not sure if we're looking at the same thing. I apologize, but let me pull it up while we're here.
I think that's a moot point at this point. Your Honor, I'd like to see that if in the future any of these important issues come up, even if we don't have a say because of the timing, I'd at least like to have the opportunity to read what's going out. I would appreciate that as a council member.
Yeah, absolutely. The declaration certainly went out, but we can make sure that if there's relevant other materials, we'll be sure to attach them for your review. Anybody else would like to speak on the item before us? All right, seeing none, I will have the clerk open the roll. Please vote aye if you are in favor of the emergency declaration, nay if you are against. The clerk will call the roll. Please vote as she calls your name.
Coe. Alder Coe.
Aye.
Alder Jones.
Aye.
Alder Tate.
Aye.
Alder Santiago.
Aye.
Alder Levy. Alder Levy.
Aye.
Alder Peterson. Alder Horton.
Aye.
Alder West.
Aye.
Alder Young.
Aye.
Alderwoman Glenn.
Abstain.
Alder Lamb.
Aye.
Alder Perez.
Abstain.
Alder Taft.
Aye.
Alder Meekma.
Aye.
Alder Lemke.
Aye.
The vote passes, 13 ayes, 2 abstains.
Thank you very much. If we could then turn the floor back over to Alder Tate. Alder Tate, did you have other items for separate consideration?
Not at this time.
Please proceed with the report, sir.
All right, item 0254-20, communication sponsored by Mayor Mason, reporting Katie Croteau as Human Resources Director. Item 0246-20, communication sponsored by Mayor Mason, requesting an extension of the deadline for initial property registration as prescribed by the rents ordinance from June 1st to August 1st. Recommendation is to approve an extension of the deadline for the initial property registration for the dates listed. This will allow more time for rental property owners to register, particularly given the circumstances that we're faced with. Item 0238-20, communication sponsored by Mayor Mason on behalf of Alder Taft, requesting a preliminary resolution for paving the north-south alley bounded by West Lawn Avenue to Monroe Avenue, 13th Street to Wright Avenue. Recommendation is that the preliminary resolution be introduced for the paving of the listed streets. Fiscal note, this is an accessible alley project and therefore all costs will be paid by the abutting property owners. Item 0243-20, communication from Mayor Mason presenting a request on behalf of the City of Racine Sustainability and Conservation Coordinator to enter into a solar ground lease agreement and electric service agreement with Wisconsin Electric Power Company, a Wisconsin corporation, doing business as We Energies. This would result in the City of Racine's participation in We Energies Solar Now program and result in 600 kilowatts a 600 kilowatt solar system being installed on a 2.64 acres at Olson Prairie Park. Recommendation was that the mayor and city clerk be authorized and directed to enter into the agreement with We Energies. Fiscal note is that this lease will generate a total revenue of approximately $26,151 annually for 31 years, approximately a total cost of $784,530 over the period of the lease.
Alder Tate, Alder Lemke has her hand raised. I want to see if we could unmute her and see if she had this item or another.
I was just looking at, and I apologize, Alder Tate, for not bringing it up right away, but just 0245-20, if we could just have a separate vote.
For which one, Alder Lemke? I'm sorry.
0245-20, the communication one, related to Kane Communications.
Yep. What page are you on?
Let me just look at the number on the bottom here.
It's on page 4.
Yeah. I apologize, Alder Tate, for not bringing that up.
And had you gotten that far, Alder Tate?
I was one short.
Okay.
Just before that.
Okay.
So we'll jump to that one as there is discussion to be had. 0245-20, communication sponsored by Mayor Mason, submitting a contract with Kane Communications Group for services related disseminating public information and conducting public outreach related to reducing the impact of COVID-19 in the city of Racine. Recommendation is to approve the contract with Kane Communications for services related to public information and conducting public research related to COVID-19 in the city of Racine. Fiscal note is that the city share of the cost after state and federal reimbursement is expected to be $19,467.50, with coming from the mayor's professional services account, with an anticipated $130,282.50 coming from state and federal funds, including FEMA recovery revenues. Move to approve.
Is there a second on the item?
Second.
Thank you, Alder Land. Alder Lemke or Alder Tate, do you want to speak to the motion at all?
Not at this time.
Okay. Alder Lemke, did you have any questions that you wanted to raise?
No, I didn't have any questions. I just want to take a separate vote, please.
Okay, great. Did anybody else? Alder Peterson has his hand up. Alder Peterson.
Couple questions. One, is it during this emergency declaration that we're able to provide such or put out such a big contract without a bid? That's the first question.
So it's a professional services contract, and professional service contracts are not bid the same way public works contracts are.
So any professional service, who deems whether or not it's professional service?
I'll defer your question to the city attorney on that.
There is a definition in our ordinances. This is in section 46-39(1). For the purposes of this section, professional services means services that are intellectual in character, including consultation, analysis, evaluation, prediction, planning, programming, or recommendation, and result in the production of a report or completion of a task. Such services include, but are not restricted to, services of the type required or permitted to be furnished by a professional under a license, registration or certificate issued by the state of Wisconsin, and there's a list of specific professionals that fall there under.
Okay, so anything that falls under that auspice or definition, you can contract with, or you can go directly to a contract without a bid. Doesn't matter what the number is.
I'm sorry, Alderman. There are a number of steps for the procurement of a professional services contract. Some that require a competitive process and some that don't. And the ones that do not require a competitive process, and there's 8, so they're not going to all apply here. So one is that public exigency will not permit the delay incident to advertising or other competitive processes. The second is the service required is available only from one person or firm. The third is the services are for professional services to be provided by attorneys who charge on an hourly basis or who are approved by the city's liability insurance carriers. Fourth is that no acceptable bids have been received after formal advertising. The fifth is that service fees are established by law or professional code. The sixth is a particular consultant has provided services to the city on a similar or continuing project in the recent past, and it would be economical to the city on the basis of time and money to retain the same consultant. The seventh is the contract is for $25,000 or less. And the eighth is otherwise authorized by law, rule, resolution, or regulation. And there are some other standards, including the contract for being less than a period of, or 1 year or less, or it's for 1 to 3 years and the cost is not more than $50,000 per year. So there are a number of steps. Generally speaking, if a contract is under $25,000, the department can go ahead and do it, assuming they already have a budget for it. And then this is a circumstance, I believe, where a particular consultant has provided services to the city on a similar or continuing project in the recent past, and therefore be economical to continue with the same consultant.
Attorney Letney, can you also explain the difference of acquiring services during a state of emergency?
Well, we do have the emergency declaration, and remember that under the law and based upon the declaration that was approved by the Common Council, the city can do whatever is necessary and expedient to respond to the emergency. And again, there is an exception to the selection process in the ordinance where public exigency will not permit the delay incident to advertising or other competitive processes.
Alder Peterson, does that answer your question?
Yes, another one or two, I guess.
Sure.
What was I at there? My understanding is some of this work has already been done, so we're paying her in arrears. Moving forward to May 31st is the end of the contract. Is that correct?
That is correct. Again, in the midst of an emergency and the pandemic and the work that we're trying to do to get people to stay safe and follow the Safer at Home guidelines to fight the pandemic, we engage them on an emergency basis to get moving on this immediately.
Okay, thank you very much. And so going forward from May 31st, is it your intention to continue? This is going to go on longer than May 31st. Is it your intention to just keep going with this firm? My concern is we have firms in downtown Racine. I understand this lady is a city resident. But we have firms in downtown Racine, Image Management. There's a number of others that could also provide the service. And I'd rather see the service provided by a taxpayer business.
I appreciate that there's no plans at this point to extend the contract beyond the termination date that we have. If that changes, I would certainly notify the council. But there are no plans at this time to do that.
All right, and if there are any future plans, I hope you would look at downtown businesses that we're trying to support with grants up the wazoo. So you might as well start giving them a little business.
Alder Glenn, you have your hand up?
Thank you. What is the past service? The city attorney had mentioned something in there about past service that Kane Communications has done for us. Are they just talking about what was been doing just prior to our meeting tonight, or at other times they've done a service for us?
I am not familiar of the city. The city has not engaged Kane Communications during my tenure as mayor before this. So if there was something before then, somebody with better historical knowledge would have to refer to that. Attorney Letney, do you know any more of the specifics of that?
I may have misspoken. I had been at least under the impression this was sort of a two-step contract, where there was some initial work that was done recently, and then this has just been an extension. If I misspoke, I'm sorry. I misunderstood.
Alder Glenn?
Okay, I just have two more questions. One of my questions is, earlier tonight, the public health administrator, Cody and Bobby, gave a very good presentation. I think with them, the county health department, and what comes down from the state, that they do a great job at this. And I don't understand why did we feel we needed to bring someone in when what we have here in the city has been doing a fantastic job?
Alder Glenn, I really appreciate your question. It was actually at the recommendation of our public health administrator that we look at a firm like Kane Communications, simply because the flood of calls that we were getting into the health department to answer frequently answered questions that could be provided with better communication, and the website we put up, the communications that we've been doing, have been really instrumental in the health department to be able to do the community tracing and other work that they need to be able to do. And to really work in partnership with a group like Kane to begin to flatten the curve, which we have not yet done. We're seeing disparities continue to climb there. So it was actually at the recommendation of our public health administrator that we considered doing this, just to be clear about the bandwidth that the health department has. Again, they have, I don't think anybody down there has taken much more than half a day off since this started. And so it was at their recommendation, both in terms of their workflow to do the community tracing and mitigation around COVID-19, and to communicate publicly with frequently asked questions and begin to try to change behavior with a communication strategy that we consulted with the firm.
Okay, and I do understand that. Like I said, they gave a great presentation, but we also have a communications guy. That couldn't he step in and handle this stuff with them and get the communications out and everything?
So the communications director is working with them on a daily basis. And I just can't emphasize enough, like, it is all hands on deck with the pandemic right now. And there is a time when you need to use professional services, when you're in a crisis and you need more bandwidth to do the work that you would do. This is exactly the time you would engage a contract to get us through the period, to hopefully keep people safe and flatten the curve.
Okay, thank you. And then I just have one more question about Kane Communications. We've never worked with them before. Kind of went back and I looked at a lot of previous, well, I had been doing this, and their name did come up when they were given like some kind of a contract for Car 25. Is that true?
That is before my tenure. I couldn't speak to that. I don't know.
Do you think the city attorney would know that?
I do recall, I think Mayor Dickert had used Kane Communications, or maybe Ms. Kane, in a prior business relationship before. If I can correct something I just said a moment ago, in fact, I'm looking at the contract that's before you that was attached to the agenda, and specifically what's before you says that Kane's Communication Group was initially engaged by the city. It says the original engagement provided up to 133 hours at a reduced hourly rate for a total of $20,000. So that was the initial engagement under the professional services $25,000 or less provision in the ordinance. And now what's before you is a change order, an expansion or extension of the contract. So in the very recent past, within the last couple of weeks, Kane Communication was engaged under that $25,000 professional services exemption. And now this contract is before you without the competitive bidding process, because the city was using them, and now it's a continuation of those services.
Okay, thank you. Well, just one last question. So a lot of this is coming from FEMA. Am I correct?
Correct.
Okay, and is there any other way we could have used this FEMA money?
There are a number of things that are reimbursable from FEMA. This is one of those activities that is reimbursable. We could have a future presentation if you'd like, Alder Glenn, about all the different ways cities and municipalities can access FEMA funds or federal funds through the CARES Act. It's an ongoing education with other municipalities from across the Wisconsin about what's reimbursable and what's not. Basically, there's a lot of activities that FEMA will cover at 75 cents on the dollar. The state will cover 12.5 cents on the dollar. And then local jurisdictions are left to pick up the remaining 12.5%. So it's not just limited to PR, but it's not like a block grant like CDBG funds where they sort of give us a chunk of money from the federal government and give us broad flexibility on how to use it. It's more that there are certain activities that are reimbursable and others that are not. And so that's how FEMA rolls those out.
Okay, I would like to get more informed on that one because I'm not very well informed on that. So I would like to get more informed on that. Thank you for answering all my questions. That's it for me.
Thank you. Alder Lemke.
If I could just speak very briefly, I wanted to mention in case it's helpful for Alder Glenn or any of the other alders. I think probably one of the reasons that Kane Communications was reached out to is because they're a local business. And for those who don't know, Kimberly Kane or the people she works with, she does have a specialty in health messaging and working on health projects, and has a long history of working throughout Southeast Wisconsin, really specifically on health-related issues. The reason I asked for a separate vote isn't because I necessarily don't agree with it. I think it's great. I support communicating more with the public. I think it's really important that people in our community are informed, and we're paying, really very little for it. The only reason I wanted a separate vote is because I've worked with her in other capacities on my day job. I don't feel comfortable thus voting on it, but so that was mainly my reason. But I do want to say, although I'm not voting for it, the reason isn't because I'm not. I actually think they're very qualified. They're a city business, and this is sort of their specialty in, managing health-related things. I just can't vote on it because of other relationships I feel like I've had with them.
Alder Lemke, thank you very much for that clarification. Alder Peterson may have his hand raised again. Alder
Correct. Looking for clarification. My information, what I got on Kane was that they're based out of Milwaukee. They have an office here in town, or just because she's a city resident and she works out of her house occasionally? Alder Lemke said that it's a local business.
I'm sorry, Alder Peterson. I guess I don't know what address they're registered at, but I do know that she's a city resident, and then some of the employees are city residents as well. So if the business is registered somewhere else, I'm not sure.
I believe their office is in Milwaukee. If they have a local office, fantastic. But that was one of my concerns. Thank you.
Thank you, Alder Peterson. Seeing no other hands up and an explanation from Alder Lemke, which I appreciate her doing very much before we took the vote. Can we, all those in favor of the item will vote aye. All opposed will vote nay. The clerk will open the roll. Please vote as she calls your name.
Alder Coe.
Aye.
Alder Jones.
Aye.
Alder Tate. Alder Tate.
Aye.
Alder Santiago.
Aye.
Alder Levy.
Aye.
Alder Peterson.
Aye.
Alder Horton.
Aye.
Alder West.
Aye.
Alder Young.
Aye.
Alderwoman Glenn.
Nay.
Alder Land.
Aye.
Alder Perez.
Aye.
Alder Taft.
Aye.
Alder Mikma.
Aye.
Alder Lemke.
Abstain.
That's going to be 13 ayes, 1 nay, and 1 abstain.
All right. Moving back then to Alder Tate. Alder Tate, I had us leaving off at the bottom of page 3, item 244-20. Is that
That's
where?
correct.
Well,
That's
please
right.
proceed with your report, sir.
All right, item 0244-20, communication sponsored by Mayor Mason to enter into a professional services contract with WRTP Big Step of Milwaukee for a total yearly cost of $75,000 for the provision of residency verification, certification tracking, and project payroll review associated with the monitoring and enforcement of the resident employment provisions of the Racine Works Ordinance. Further, to waive formal bidding procedures requiring the advertisement and solicitation of bids for professional services exceeding $25,000 for such consulting services, and declare such contract appropriately sole sourced. Recommendation is to approve the above communication, including the waiving of bids to identify this contract as sole sourced. Fiscal notice: sufficient funds have been allocated within the adopted 2020 budget in the listed account to cover the $75,000 yearly cost for 2020. Move to approve.
You wanted that for separate consideration, or?
Oh, no, I don't. Please continue. I will continue. All right. Skip. Last item of the Office of the Mayor's report, item 0228-20, communication sponsored by Mayor Mason on behalf of Alder Jones, requesting authorization for the mayor and city clerk to sign the Urban Mass Transit Assistance Operating 2020 Program Grant Agreement per Wisconsin State Statute 85.20 between Wisconsin Department of Transportation and the City of Racine. A recommendation that the mayor and city clerk sign the Urban Mass Transit Assistance Operating 2020 Program Grant Agreement. Fiscal notice that this will provide $4.7 million generated revenue for the city, for $4,713,419 to be specific. And then that concludes. Wait, no, one more. Yes, one more item, 0229-20, communication sponsored by Mayor Mason on behalf of Alder Jones, requesting authorization for the mayor and city clerk to sign the Urban Mass Transit Assistance. Wait a minute, is this on here twice? No, okay, it's a different grant. Urban Mass Transit Assistance Operating 2020 Program Grant Agreement per Wisconsin State Statute 85.205 between Wisconsin Department of Transportation and the City of Racine. Grant control number 00287. Recommendation is that the mayor and city clerk sign the agreement, sign the Urban Mass Transit Assistance Operating 2020 Program Grant Agreement. And the fiscal notice that this will generate $94,000 for the fiscal year. That concludes the Office of the Mayor report.
Alder Perez, did you have a question or a request for separate consideration?
Yeah, Your Honor, I had a question on 024420 before you moved on. Could we address that question at this point?
As in, do you have a question about it, or would you like us to take it up separately?
No, I have a question about it.
Okay, please state your question.
Thank you. Considering that this is a contract for a company to monitor the use of our ordinances and using our people in our community, and it comes out of Milwaukee, and Alder Tate said it was a sole sourced. And is there a reason for this? I guess it's professional services as well, but shouldn't something like this really be handled by someone in-house or within our own community, since we're talking about monitoring people in our community, doing work in our community? It seems a little hypocritical on our part to go outside unless there's extenuating circumstances. Could you please explain why we're doing this?
Alder Perez, it's a great question. My hope initially when we had adopted Racine Works is that we could just do it internally, that we could take on the work of that reporting work ourselves. And what we've found is that it's quite simply not that simple to be able to do that. It's more complicated. And so as we continue to work with developers who want to do this work and want to make sure that we're getting people here hired on those jobs, you really need a third party to be able to do the work of working with the contractors and working with people who are doing job training to make sure that compliance is actually occurring. And so you had to find somebody who had some experience doing that. The firm that staff identified as having experience doing that in the region was Big Step, WRTP, and so that was why they came forward with that recommendation. But your question is exactly the question I asked 6 months, a year ago. Like, can't we just figure this out internally? Like, how hard can this be? But it's actually more complicated than we would have guessed, and why we wanted to lean on a firm that had experience doing a very similar project around compliance in the city of Milwaukee on their program, which is one of the inspirations for our.
Look, can I go?
Yeah,
looking at the fiscal note for this, is it cheaper to hire outside than it would have been to hire internally?
Yes.
So it makes more sense to go outside than to try and find someone internally. And are we going outside of the city itself just because there's no other people that specialize in this that we are aware of?
So again, this came forward with a staff recommendation of people who had the experience to be able to do this work. We don't know of anybody who's done the same kind of compliance work outside, because the city of Racine doesn't have a history of an ordinance like this. There's not anybody homegrown that we could tap to do that, which is sort of ironic because it's for the Racine Works program, which is all about encouraging people who live here to get these construction jobs. But what we have really found, though, is if we want to make sure that we're holding these developers to account, and them being real partners in making sure they're hiring local people to get into the trades to help build these facilities, you really need somebody who has a track record of having done that before to maximize it. So it's definitely cheaper to do it as a contract, and it's definitely more effective to tap somebody who has experience doing it to make sure we're getting the compliance that we need, so that we're getting more people who live here hired on the work that we're getting done here in the city of Racine.
Thank you,
Mr. Mayor, if I may, I believe the Assistant Finance Director's on the phone, and she may have more information to give.
If that is, it appears that she is. If Assistant Director Fisher could add some context to this, I think it might be helpful for Alder Perez's questions.
Sure. Can you hear me?
We can.
Wonderful. Thank you for having me. This item in particular, Alder Perez, we actually did quite a bit of legwork internally, and we did work with the purchasing department relating to it, as well as the city administrator and the mayor's office. And really what we found is exactly what the mayor said, is WRTP really built the Milwaukee program with the city of Milwaukee pretty much from scratch. And this is what they do, and they do it really, really well. But we did interview the firm extensively between myself, the purchasing agent, HR was present, as well as the mayor's office. And they spent a lot of time with us and explained to us even some of perhaps our pitfalls in our ordinance, and very specifically what they would do to help us out in our Racine work. So we were very impressed by the company and their representatives, and they're very excited to help out the city of Racine.
Thank you.
Thank you, Alder Perez. Alder Peterson had his hand up next.
I did a little research on them as well. It sounds like they're a nonprofit, and it appeared that they had an office, at least office space, in the Gateway building downtown. Can anybody speak to that? When somebody's a nonprofit and things for the good of, it appears like a good company. And like I said, it seems like they also have space at a Gateway. So
that is correct. Alder Santiago. He appears to still be muted. Alder Santiago? There we go.
Okay. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. Thank you, Mayor. Yeah, I just had a quick question as to the verbiage that was used with the not taking bids. Like, what is the motivation or the benefit to that? Is it that we just have that much confidence in this WRTP company, or what is the benefit to including that verbiage?
I mean, I'll let Assistant Director Kathleen talk about it in this this case, but I can tell you, generally speaking, we were looking for somebody who had past experience working with a municipality to do compliance around this kind of a program. And I know that was a big part of it. I don't know if Kathleen is still able to speak to it, but she might be able to offer some more context for Alder Santiago.
Sure, absolutely. You're absolutely right. The language included in this item is very specific because it is a professional service. We did, like I said, we did a vetting process associated with WRTP, but there were not any equivalent vendors that do this type of work or have done this type of work successfully, in particularly our size of an organization, if not even a larger size organization like the city of Milwaukee. There's not a lot of communities that have this level of ordinance, nor the level of need that we have, particularly in our community. WRTP also helps us with a training program within the city of Racine. They're familiar with our workers in the city of Racine, as well as our vendors within the city of Racine.
May I add something, Mr. Mayor?
Please.
And Alder Santiago, in accordance with the ordinance that I addressed before about professional services contracts, our ordinance specifically says in the case of a sole source, public exigency, or previous provider exemptions, if the aggregate amount of the fee for services will exceed $25,000 and the contract was not subject to a competitive selection process, the contract will meet one of the requirements I discussed earlier and be approved by the Common Council. So sometimes, depending on who is writing the agenda item, they'll specifically reference this language saying, you know, it has to be approved because it was a sole source. Sometimes it just gets to the council with the same effect. It just doesn't have that same language.
Mayor, can we ask Jim, he wrote the ABM, to sort of speak up on the item as well?
Sure, that'd be great.
Yeah, and I think Attorney Letney really covered that pretty effectively, and that is we would typically solicit or advertise for professional services when we know it's more than $25,000, unless it is very clearly a sole source. And as Kathleen indicated as well, as we vetted this particular firm, and as we heard from contractors that we were negotiating with when we were putting in original language about Racine Works into some of our incentive agreements, we recognized that everybody kept talking about WRTP Big Step because they, in fact, virtually invented the process in Southeast Wisconsin. They've done it with the city of Milwaukee. They've done it with so many different entities. They really are the successful pioneers in this. So there was really no point to even imagine trying to look for somebody who really didn't understand it, when almost everybody recognized the fact that the one entity that truly was the sole source provider was WRTP Big Step. So hence the reason for the sole source, and hence the reason ultimately why we made this selection.
Okay, thank you. I looked them up and they seem like a pretty stellar company. I just wanted some clarification on that. Thank you.
Thank you for asking your question. I see no other questions at this time. Seeing none, if you want to vote in support of it, vote aye. If you're against, vote nay.
Hang on, there was no motion here. It's just
that's right. These were just questions for clarification. Thank you very much, Alder Tate. So I guess unless there are other considerations, without objections, these items will be placed on the consent agenda. Moving on now to Planning, Heritage, and Design. Alder Young, do you have an item for separate consideration?
Not at this time.
Please read the report, sir.
Item 0217-20, communication from Mayor Mason submitting the request from Larry Ehrlich of LEIX LLC seeking a conditional use permit to operate a recycling drop-off site for metals and automobiles and a 15 square foot electronic message sign on the southern 4.25 acre portion the property at 1917 South Memorial Drive.
Okay, thank you. Without objection, this will be added to the consent agenda. Seeing no objections, we'll move that onto the consent agenda. Moving on now to the consent agenda. Alder Tate, at this time, I'd entertain a motion to approve the consent agenda.
Move to approve.
Alder Young, would you, there's a second. All those in favor of the consent agenda, if we could unmute everybody. All those in favor of the consent agenda, please say aye.
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 I was trying to get consideration on the planning, heritage, and design one, and I apparently wasn't able to do something right on my computer.
Back up.
Okay, well, it's passed at this point. Alder Coe, do you want to speak to the item?
Yeah, well, I just say that this to a meeting to us.
Alder Coe, hang on just a second. If we could mute everybody.
I don't want to be muted because I have more to say about this. I did have my hand raised before we voted on this.
Alder Coe has the floor right now. Alder Glenn,
Okay, I just want to make sure to say I had my hand raised for this and I wasn't.
Okay, I asked twice and saw no hands raised. Alder Coe, you have the floor.
Well, maybe I didn't push the right button, and I apologize.
That's okay.
I just don't like the way this had this meeting tonight. You know, the way times are. I remember all the problems they had with this concrete company over there. Now we want to put a recycling drop-off place, and I got some concerns about. Well, there's going to be cars there. How are they going to stop oil leaking and seeping into the ground? I'm looking at. I'm on the north side here, across from Bell City. There's a recycling yard there that is sitting there that we're going to have to end up cleaning up one day because it's no longer open. And I got concerns that we're going to have the same kind of problem here. And I don't know how they're going to do this on such a small area where they're going to have cars, how they're going to be able to hide cars, how they're going to stop leaching of oil and antifreeze and stuff into the groundwater, and how much traffic is going to be going in and out of there that's going to affect the area. I'm worried about, you know, it could affect other things in the area.
Alder Coe, thank you very much for your comments. I can tell you that those were concerns that were raised at the Planning and Heritage and Design Committee. I'll refer your comments to Alder Young, if I may. So they're all issues that came up and were addressed at the meeting. Alder Young, do you mind speaking to the conversation?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just to provide some context, this property has been a subject of the Plan Commission since December of 2019. Originally, there was a proposal for there to be a concrete crushing company that would move into that site. And because of the findings of fact, the Plan Commission rejected that application due to it being injurious to the health and well-being of both economic development and the public health. So after due diligence, the city staff worked with the owner of the property to find a applicant that would be responsible and meet the findings of fact, which are important to the judicial role of the Plan Commission. And so what you see before you is a recycling drop-off warehouse where none of the crushing or any of the type of concerns that have been brought up in the previous meeting will be happening, because they will be transporting those items to Waukesha at their other plant. A concern about how this proceeded, because the applicant applied in early March, I believe it was March 6th or March 8th. There is state statute that dictates when local municipalities are able to address a conditional use permit. And so we were actually over the allotted period of days in which we were able to address this permit. And because of that, we were in a sensitive time crunch that nobody really wanted to be in, but because of the situation we're in, that was the result. And then in our meeting before this meeting, which is why we were late today, we spent an hour deliberating this one item in which we heard from individuals who are from that area. One individual in particular who provided testimony. And so because of that, we reviewed the findings of fact, and we found that because the DNR and the EPA would be involved in regulating that type of oil and chemical mitigation, and because this company operates both in Milwaukee in the 3rd Ward and in Waukesha with a reputable background, and meeting all of the findings of fact dictated by staff since March 6th, that they would then be granted this conditional use permit. And so that is what is before you today. That was that we added to the consent agenda, but I would be willing to have an individual vote on that if that is proper. I don't know if that's proper.
Okay. I think technically you'd have to move to reconsider at this point. I don't know if Attorney Letney would weigh in on the procedure, what you would have to do that at this point.
To have a motion for reconsideration, somebody who voted in the majority must move to reconsider.
Well, then, interest of fairness, because this is technology and somebody might have pressed their button or might not have, I would be willing to reconsider just to have the discussion.
Fair enough. Is there a second for that? Alder Jones?
Second.
Would you be willing to second that? Alder Jones, I see your hand up. Would you be willing to second that? Alder Jones? You are no longer muted. We can hear you.
You. I second.
Okay.
Motion.
And did you want to, and so what we have before us is reconsideration of item 0217-20, the one item under the PhD committee report. Alder Jones, did you want to speak to this item?
Thank you, Mayor. I would just like to say that I had a couple concerns regarding the oil leakage, as Alderman Coe stated, that the cars are going to be stored there and leaking. And I would like to know what the DNR saying would be on cars, whether they have to be drain of the oil and antifreeze prior to them being shipped someplace else. And if that was the case, how would the company address it?
My understanding, and Alder Young, you're certainly willing to add context to this. I know, Alder Jones, you're a couple minutes late, but that one of the conditions of us giving them the conditional use permit is that they would have to meet all DNR and EPA regulations before the occupancy could move forward. And that's something that they have experience doing at their other facilities, something they would have to address under the law. In addition, our own city department would review the site for stormwater runoff and ensure that local ordinances are being complied with in that regard as well. Alder Young, was there anything else I missed in that?
No, that was conclusive.
Alder Jones, did you have other comments or questions?
Is it possible, though, for us to find out any more information? As was stated in the Heritage meeting, some of the residents were not notified. And do we want to give them any more input into it? Not that it would change. I'm not upset about the jobs that it would bring and the money, but I would just like for all the residents to be totally supportive of it before we move it in, and not have them think that we just shove something down their throats.
Yeah, and just to be clear, we had one person say that, and staff wanted to make sure that I clarified that we mailed him the notice of the meeting to the address that he has on file with the city, as quickly as he would have liked. But the staff did comply with the requirements to have it mailed there. If he wants us to send him city mail somewhere else, we're happy to do it in the future. But I do think it's important to understand that the city did do all the public notification required under state and local law. but I hear your concern. Alder Tate.
Actually, I think Alder Glenn was ahead.
Alder Glenn.
Hi, right off the bat, it's not that I want to deny this. I know that the alderman from the 9th district said, you know, the finding and facts for this. Not all the facts have been found. So I don't want to say right off the bat, I would just like to defer this for 2 weeks. I know they said in our, you know, in the meeting, Matt and Jeff had even said to me that we're so busy with the coronavirus that we don't have time to do city business. I think we need to find time to do city business. And I think this is a time where we need to get more, you know, figure out more facts on this. I would just like to delay this, which is, you know, a possible action that we can take, even though it was over 45 days. But the 45 days is to when we take it to council. So yeah, we're off a couple days, but once we get it here and either we defer it back for 2 more weeks for the Planning, Heritage and Design meeting to find out some more facts about this. So I'd like to make a motion to defer this.
Is there Alder Perez? You have
Second that, I also have some comments that I'd like to make as well.
okay. Alder has the floor, however.
Okay, there is a few things. The meeting was going. I just didn't want that meeting to go on for as long as it did. So I quieted my questions and everything regarding this. I actually did send Jeff an email because he said if I would email him questions or, you know, that didn't happen. But there's another issue that I don't think we've even addressed is the application for the, you know, Corporation of Waste Tire Transportation. In fact, means that if we're having tires on a vehicle and we're transporting it, there's, you know, they do have to pay for that. There's also another one, a Corporation of Waste Tire Generator License. You know, which an application, which no one even brought up at the meeting regarding this. Are they included in getting this? Because I misspoke about the first one, the Corporation of Waste Tire Transportation Transporter License. I mean, that's $30 a vehicle that they would have to be paying to transport these scrap cars or junk cars or whatever else like that. Are they aware that that has to be, you know, included in their fees that they would have to be paying to the city? Or are they, you know, there's more questions out there that still have not been answered. As for me, does the city, are we updated by the DNR and the EPA? Should they have a violation, they come out there and check them out and they have a violation. Are we updated on that? So there's still a lot of questions out there that I just think that need to be answered before we can approve this.
Thank you. Alder Perez.
I have some concerns. I watched that meeting as well. The fact that it took more days to come before overdoing the 45-day limit to 50, they seemed a little disingenuous with their comments about the salary, you know, 60,000 plus, and then like, oh, that's because of 60 hours in overtime. And also the fact that our department said, okay, let's put a 12-foot fence in instead of a 10-foot fence on the property. And there was no landscaping, which a lot of times we can't even get properties to do the right thing because they don't know where their plants go. I thought that whole meeting was kind of rushed through because of what was going on. No, it took a long time and a lot of discussion. And a statement was made by one of the supporters that it was the finding of facts before us were accurate and complete. I don't think they were either accurate or complete. And I'm really concerned that we're trying to rush this through. And even though we might have complied legally with sending the paperwork to, I think it'd be wise on our part as we continue to strive for transparency and accountability and all those things, that we give it just even 2 more weeks to get the community more informed and then move forward with the information we have. I understand that once it comes to us, the time changes because now we make the decision of what happens to it next, and then a new time period comes up before we have to make a decision. Unless there's a time immediacy, we don't have to act on this today. I understand it's a business. We want it in our community. We want them to comply with the rules. We want to make sure that our community is safe. And I too had concerns about vehicles, even though they said that they would be de-oiled and de-liquefied in another place, they're still going to leak oils onto the property. And we're concerned about clean property. And, we waste all this time on cleaning the dirt that's in all the places that we're trying to redo. We really have some concerns that we still have to address. And I don't think that they were addressed well, even with the conditional use circumstances that were placed on there. So I'm recommending as well, thinking of what Alder Glenn said, just a 2-week deferment where we have the community more involved, or maybe send out another letter saying, hey, this is what's going on to everyone in the community. Please respond back to the city. Let's get some feedback. These are the things that might be going on. Contact your alderman, contact another alderman, whatever we need to do. But in order to continue to get our community to trust us, in order to be more transparent, and in order for us to do our job well, we can't just go on the, oh, this happened today that we found out about it, and then we are moving on the information. I think we really do need a little bit of time, even though it may not make a difference. I think time-wise, the community and the perception is that we need a little extra time to look at it. And even though we may not look at it directly, I think we have to commission our workers in the planning, heritage, and design, and or whoever else works for us, to be able to alleviate some of the concerns that we have. For example, what's going to happen with the tires? What's going to happen when those oils leak onto the ground? What about the turnaround space? What kind of problem is that going to create? If you're bringing in a truck that transports vehicles into this area and they're scrap, how are they going to turn around on that property? What are they going to do? How's that going to affect traffic? Those issues were not addressed at all in the report that was given. And usually when our conditional use permits come up, they're pretty thorough, even to the point of the color of the paint. And for the one that I heard today, I was quite surprised that it wasn't specific at all. It was very general, except for like a 12-foot fence, and really didn't address many of the other issues. And that concerned me. When we put a property, we put a mall under so many circumstances, and here's a company that could potentially cause hazardous fuel leaks. And we're like, oh no, just raise your fence 2 more feet so nobody can see the cars that are stacked up with the 10 feet. Well, I got an issue with that. I'm really concerned that we're not doing what we're called to do. Thank you.
Alder Young.
To have all of the alders turn their attention to one of the attachments that's in your agenda, which is city's staff report. So you're going to be able to see all of the requirements that have been laid out by city staff regarding things like landscaping. If you look at page, if you look at page 4, you'll see in the middle of the page that there are certain requirements regarding fences, regarding walls, and then standards that are related to I2 zone districts. If we do our due diligence, which I believe we have, what we need to do is be a city that allows businesses to start and grow in this community. If we're talking about perception, which Alderman Perez rightfully pointed out, that's really important. We need to be a community that is allowing people to come in, employ, and ensure that they're following all of the different standards that we've outlined uniquely here. That's why I'm speaking against deferring, because we've been having a discussion about this property in City Hall since December of 2019. And so the idea that we have a land create jobs, meet these requirements, and also follow all of the different rules and regulations in terms of environmental remediation and outreach, I feel like we've done the work that we need to do. It is things over WebEx and have these types of meetings, but we've done everything that we needed to in terms of the law and in terms of staff reviewing this application. So I would speak against deferring it. I would hope that we would vote on it tonight and approve it.
Alder Tate.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm not opposed in principle to deferral. I think initially, I had asked for, broader communication in the, subject area of the 200 feet to go to the corresponding residents so that they could just be informed. It's unfortunate that A1 did not, receive their communication in the time period that we would have desired, because I know Ralph is very intentional and concerned about what goes across the street from him, given his experiences over the last several years. I'm not opposed to this particular project for the various reasons that the Plan Commission has already gone through and cited. Additionally, I reached out to the Development Department a couple days ago to ask specific questions that I expected would have been brought up today about this particular project because of what's happened there previously. As it relates to the stormwater runoff or the any pollutants in the area, this company will still be subject to City of Racine standards of environmental protection. So that means that they're gonna have to still submit a plan to our city engineer department as far as how their water runoff operates and what they're going to do to mitigate that, so that it still adheres to city regulations. What we're discussing tonight isn't everything else that's going to happen before this business starts operating. It's just, does it fit in the place that they're proposing to go, and do they have a legal right to function there? The answer is yes. This is still an industrial 2 zoned area. Across the street is an auto body shop. Behind it is a train track. As far as what goes there, this is the kind of business, particularly one that doesn't kick up a ton of dust and potentially contaminate and pollute the surrounding neighbors, that would be appropriate in that area. When we talk about the traffic, it's on South Memorial Drive, which is a 4-lane road in the city of Racine. So whether it's a truck backing in or out, there's plenty of room for vehicles to continue to navigate there. So I think the concerns we're throwing up right now aren't really the ones that are really relevant to what's proposing to go there. Again, this is still an industrial area. South of this site is another auto place that has, if you look at the photos that are attached, cars lining it, and those cars don't move very often. So we're throwing our arms up in terms of vehicles going into a place to be ultimately transported somewhere else for recycling, when if you actually look at the aerial view, what else makes sense there? I mean, so I'm certainly in support of the project. I'm not opposed to deferral for the sake of communication to various folks, but the reality is, as others have already noted, this is likely to move forward because there's really no reason for it not to. This isn't a substantial environmental impact or negative or injurious to the surrounding neighbors as previously proposed tenants would have been. So for us to kind of pump brakes on this, it's fine, but it's also not necessarily necessary in terms of what actually needs to happen. And if we are to be business friendly, as we often are criticized as not being, this would be the exact opposite of what would ultimately communicate a business-friendly city. When they've met their requirements, they've met the need, they presented themselves, and they've been waiting over a month to kind of get to this point, and to be kicked down the road for 2 more weeks for not really getting any additional facts that actually would affect whether they should operate in this space, sends, I think, a negative message in terms of those who want to operate businesses in the city of Racine, particularly industrial and manufacturing type businesses in the city of Racine. Thank you.
Thank you. Alder Peterson.
I have kind of a naive question to ask, being new here. The conditional use permit, is there a time frame on that? Can that be rescinded at any time? I'm a little confused on the conditional use permit.
That's a great question,
Verbiage.
Alder Peterson. They are by their definition conditional, and so if they weren't abiding by them or wanted to do something major to change it, they would have to go back to the Planning Commission or the Planning, Heritage, and Design Commission and full council for major changes, and then the committee reserves the right to review any of the people or entities that have received conditional use permits for non-compliance. So it is, the oversight remains in place on a perpetual basis when people get conditional use permits. It's what makes them conditional. I would defer a better explanation to the city attorney if you anything to that.
Sure. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yeah, Alderman Peterson, essentially what the mayor said is true. If I can just read from the beginning of the particular ordinance, it says conditional use permits may be reviewed from time to time for compliance with conditions prescribed by the Common Council, by the zoning administrator, or there's a couple other conditions. And then the zoning administrator and the council have the authority to revoke a conditional use permit if the permit holder hasn't complied with the conditions. So it can be done.
Okay, so there's not a time frame on there. It's just forever conditional unless at some point they change the status, which would have to come back to the Common Council.
Or if they fail to meet one of the conditions that allowed them to get the permit in the first place.
Right, but there's not an expiration date on this.
No, a conditional use permit is, a conditional use is always a conditional use unless the zoning ordinance changes to maybe change it to a permitted use or something.
Got it. Thank you very much.
So I will just concern here. I think Alder Tate and Alder Young's points were really well taken. What we're being asked to do is determine whether or not this application adequately meets the zoning ordinance. And I do have concerns. We've asked this applicant to wait an unusually long period of time through nobody's fault, save coronaviruses. And I do worry that these jobs would be provided here. I do worry that we would miss the opportunity for them to come to our community if we extend this 2 weeks longer, particularly as people are saying, I don't think anything will be different, but I'd still like more time. The flip is, when businesses come on a local business in our community, they're looking for certainty that we can give them an answer on a green light or a red light about whether or not that'll happen without being waylaid a bureaucratic process for a long time. Now, again, I know this is unusual because we haven't been meeting regularly because of coronavirus, but nonetheless, we have a business that would like to start and grow here. And I am concerned that we may lose the opportunity for them to come here if we don't give them clarity that they need. Alder Tate.
Forgot to put my hand down.
Alder Peterson, do you still have your hand up?
Oh yeah, I forgot to put it down.
All right. Alder Glenn.
Thank you. I just want to remind everyone, these zoning ordinances have been in effect since 1950. Times have changed, and I've heard plenty of times on the Common Council, different persons saying that, we need to really look at these zonings of these properties because, it's 70 years old and times have changed for stuff like that. One of the things that really wasn't pointed out to us, city recommendations or the site plans, was where their garbage containers are going to be, how much fluid, different fluids that they're going to be storing on site for a while. Those are a lot of questions that weren't answered. We have more questions, honestly, from that meeting. We have more questions than answers to that. And as to the alderman from the 9th district saying that this has been going on since December. No, this is a whole new business plan. The whole Common Council voted 15-0 not to allow that concrete batch plant there. So it wasn't to deny that. So this is a whole new business now. And we can't keep hanging on to the concrete batch part of it because that's done and over with. We voted on that, so let's not bring that up anymore. But, we do have more questions on this. In staff recommendations, a lot of things that are in there is about, where they're going to put up a 12-foot fence instead of a 10-foot fence. Love that it's a 12-foot fence, you know, just so they can pile up their cars, their old cars that are leaking oils, transmission fluid, oil, brake fluid, antifreeze, I mean, and stuff like that. And the other big thing that was on this is a sign. With this type of plant, we really need to be concerned about all these other things that we still don't have questions for. I spent an hour on the phone this morning with Matt and Jeff, and a lot of things that I heard from them is, we don't know. Well, let's just answer our questions fully so that we can approve this. We can defer it for 2 weeks and approve it so that, you know what, our questions are answered. We're going to feel good about this. It's just right now, our questions are not being answered. And it's kind of like I can't feel good about going forward with this. You know, if we delay it for 2 weeks, I have a neighbor in my district that would like to go to their Milwaukee plant that is basically the same size as what this plant is going to be, go check out and what they're doing. So even one neighbor and myself will actually see what's going on there. So that's really all I have to say. Thank you.
Alder Tate, do you have your hand up?
Thank you. So one thing, it's zoned I2. Yes, we've talked about, you know, needing to change ordinances and change zoning patterns. Houses aren't going to go on this site based on what's structured there elsewhere. So let's kind of disabuse ourselves of what updating our zoning ordinances means for what actually goes in certain places. Again, across the street is an auto body shop. North of that is a manufacturer. South of that is looks like a junkyard to that effect. So, I mean, homes aren't going to go, it's not going to become zoned residentially. We want to update our zoning to address things that, you know, environmental impacts that perhaps don't exist in our ordinances or zoning. But, you know, something else isn't going to go there other than industrial or manufacturing. I think we need to get that around our heads. Additionally, I keep hearing people calling this a plant. It's not. It's a drop-off site for recycling, for metal recycling. It's not a plant. They're not manufacturing anything. They're not producing anything. They're moving things and storing things and then transporting them elsewhere for the actual processing to occur. And as far as some of the other facts or at least questions that people have, those are not necessary for the answering the question we have before us tonight, which is, does this proposed business fit the zoning for that area? The answer is yes. It's fairly straightforward. City staff have gone through and said, what are you proposing to do here? Okay. Does this fit with the zoning it's in? Yes. And that's kind of the end of it. Now, if we have other things to answer or other questions, certainly ask them, but that's not a reason to delay or defer the foregone conclusion that this business fits the zoning that it's proposing to go to. Now, as it relates to some of the other, you know, concerns that people have presented, the DNR and the EPA regulate some of the questions that have been asked about what happens with storage of chemicals or what happens with the freon in the vehicles. Those are not zoning questions. That is a DNR regulatory question. That is an EPA regulatory question. Talking about the stormwater runoff, that's a city engineer question that they will have to comply with, and they will have to present plans for those. But those are not the zoning questions that are before us tonight. So, you know, if there's various questions about, you know, how this operates and what it does and how they go about doing it, ask them by all means. Those are fine questions, but that's not the question before us tonight. The question before us tonight is, does this proposed business fit the zoning that it's proposing to go to? The answer is yes, and we should vote accordingly on that. Delaying that isn't actually going to change the question, the answer for 2 weeks. It's just going to make potentially the proposed applicant reconsider whether they want to operate in the city of Racine. And I don't think any of us want that. I think the folks who live several blocks east or west of this place who don't have jobs might be interested in being able to walk to work sometime. But the reality is, either way, if you have concerns about those other areas, those are fine questions to be addressed. That's not tonight's question, though. Tonight's question is, does this proposed business fit the zoning that it's proposing to go into? That's what we're debating. If you have additional questions about what does DNR enforcement look like? They have a number. If you have additional questions about what EPA enforcement looks like, there's a number for that. If you have questions about how they're going to manage or regulate stormwater runoff, we have a city engineer that will tell you, here are what our expectations are. Here's the grading of the land. This is what they're going to need to have in place in order to do this. But that's not the question tonight. The question tonight is zoning. And does it fit the zone that they're trying to go into? And is it not injurious to the neighbors, which previous applicants have been? This is not. So I just want to clarify what we're actually talking about tonight, so the questions that are coming up can go into the right directions and be addressed, but not in the forum that they don't belong, which is the question of zoning tonight. Thank you.
Alder Young.
I first want to thank Alder Glenn, Alder Coe, Alder Perez for asking really good questions. It is our job as alders to engage in this type of material and make sure that we know all of the facts before we vote on things. So I do appreciate them bringing about this discussion. Attached in your agenda is the actual application that was submitted by the applicant. And what you can see is, as previously stated, it's not just a fence being the expectation. You can see even down to a floor plan of what the warehouse is going to look like. The detail that's gone into this type of work. You can even see what the light patterns from what would be installed at the site. And so I want us all to know that we have the proper information that we need to vote on this tonight, which is why, again, I would be voting against deferral.
Are there other questions that people feel like they need to ask tonight? I see no hands raised. Just want to make sure we're not missing any. Okay, again, the motion before us is to defer item 0217-20, communication of Larry Ulrich of LEIX LLC, seeking a conditional use permit to operate a recycling drop-off site for metals and autos and a 15 square foot electronic message sign on the southern portion of the property, 17 South Memorial Drive. If you are in favor of deferring, vote aye. If you are opposed to deferring, vote no. When we'll call the roll, please.
Alder Coe,
Aye.
Alder Jones,
Aye.
Aye.
Alder Santiago,
Nay.
Alder Levy,
No.
Alder Peterson,
Aye.
Alder Horton, Alder West,
No.
Alder Young,
No.
Alderwoman Glenn,
Aye.
Alder Lamb,
No.
Alder Perez,
Aye.
Alder Taft,
No.
Alder Mikma,
No.
Alder Lemke.
No.
That is 9 noes and 6 yeses.
The motion to defer the item for 2 weeks has failed, 9-6. We are now back to the main motion, which is to reconsider. I will ask Attorney Letney to clarify for me if you're yes to reconsider again, or is the yes vote against it and the no vote for it? If you could refresh my memory and the council on a vote for reconsideration, and please.
A motion to reconsider would just undo the prior vote, which was the part of the consent agenda. So if the motion to reconsider passes, then there would have to be another vote on the actual conditional use permit.
So what we have before us is a motion to consider whether or not vote on it separately again, but it's not the ultimate determinant of our action tonight. It's just we should vote on it again. Again, it passed consent agenda. Some technology concerns that we have. Alder Young was, I think, generous in his willingness to do a motion for reconsideration to make sure we had a vote on this. So to be clear, a vote to reconsider just moves us to the next place where we could vote on the item as a standalone item. Is there anyone who wants to speak on reconsideration? Alder Tate?
Thank you. First, I just wanted to make sure for the record that the prior vote was recorded as a no for me.
Oh, you are correct. It would have been a no. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you. So I'm going to speak against reconsider. Well, I mean, I seconded the motion to reconsider because I wanted us to be able to reopen this discussion, and allow others the opportunity to weigh in. Since the established vote is already yes, I'm going to speak against reconsideration for the same reasons that I spoke against deferral. And that's all I'll say about that. Thank you.
Okay. What we have before us is a motion to reconsider. I think Alder Tate's points are well taken. I have no other hands up. Again, I have no other hands up. So the motion to reconsider and go, oh, Alder Glenn does have her hand up. Alder Glenn, would you like to speak on the motion to reconsider?
I would just like to reconsider this. I really did have my hand up. I know with this new technology for all of us that my hand was missed, and I did make a few points. And I had a few questions about this. If we could just vote on it, I'd greatly appreciate it.
All right. Any other hands? Alder Young.
These technical difficulties and knowing that we want to make sure that everybody can contribute to the discussion, I would, encourage us to reconsider and then have the vote on whether or not it passes.
Alder Tate, do you?
Yes. I just want to kind of clarify as far as what reconsideration could mean and potentially save us some grief through the process. So if we were to not reconsider at this time, that would be an effective yes vote for moving forward. If we choose to reconsider, we still have the option to say yes or no, but it would add an additional step and potentially artificially lengthen the meeting. I just want to clarify that for my colleagues.
Okay. Any other hand consideration? Right. Seeing none. Again, the vote before us is reconsideration of whether or not to vote. It is not a vote on the matter. Clerk will open the roll. Would like to reconsider the vote, vote aye. If you are against it, vote no. Vote when the clerk calls your name.
Alder Coe,
No.
Alder Jones,
Aye.
Alder Tate,
No.
Alder Santiago, Alder Levy, Alder Peterson,
No.
Alder Horton,
No.
Alder West, Alder Young,
Yes.
Alder Glenn,
Yes.
Alder Lamb,
No.
Alder Perez,
Aye.
Alder Taft,
No.
Alder Mikva,
Aye.
Alder Lemke,
No.
that is 10 noes and 5 ayes.
Okay. So the motion to reconsider has failed. We have approved the agenda. We now move on to common council announcements. If people would like to make announcements, please raise your hand. Please raise your hand. Please raise your hand. Alder Tate.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I wanted to wish Miss, oh gosh, I'm blanking on the name. Come back to me.
All right. Alder Glenn.
I would just like to say that this last vote was unjust because I did have my hand up. You know, as well as I know, Corey, that you rushed through that consent agenda to get a vote on there. I think with this new technology, we need to take a minute and make sure everyone's voice is heard. Thank you.
Alder Santiago.
Yes, I would just like to take a second to wish my beautiful wife happy birthday. Her birthday's on Thursday. Just had to acknowledge her on here. That's all. Thank you.
Thank you. Alder Levy.
Thank you, Your Honor. I want to wish all the moms out there a happy Mother's Day. Mother's Day is coming up this Sunday, May 11th. So be sure to wish your mom happy Mother's Day.
Amen. Alder Tate.
Alder Levy, yes, happy Mother's Day. I think we all can say that. I did want to give a special recognition and shout out and congratulations to Angela Boutwell. She was noted in the recent paper as a recovery from COVID-19. She's one of my constituents, and her parents are in my district as well. So I just wanted to wish her all the health and, certainly give warm regards to her and her family because she was able to successfully recover from a positive diagnosis of COVID-19. Thank you.
Thank you. Alder Young.
It's International Giving Day, so be sure to choose your favorite nonprofit and support their efforts in making either our community, our nation, or our world a better place.
Thank you, Alder Young. Alder Levy, did you have another item?
Sorry, I forgot.
Okay. Alder Santiago, did you have another item? All right, seeing no other announcements before us. Everybody.
A minute, what?
We're adjourned.
Isn't Alder West supposed to move to adjourn? All right. Good night, everybody.